On 17th of January 1944, in the hills of central Italy near Monte Cassino, Allied forces began one of the hardest fights in Europe. The battle still matters because it showed how terrain, weather, and stubborn defense could stall even overwhelming strength. By then, Italy had become a battlefield after the Allied landings in the south and the collapse of Mussolini's regime. Germany turned the peninsula into a defensive barrier, hoping mountains and rivers would slow the advance north. The campaign sat inside a larger political struggle over post-war Europe, Allied unity, and Germany's need to buy time. Every ridge held value beyond its height, because each mile north shaped the future of the peninsula. The Allied command brought together Americans, British, French, New Zealanders, Indians, Poles, Canadians, and others under immense pressure. Their leaders had to balance caution, urgency, and political expectations while facing a determined enemy. On the German side, commanders relied on disciplined infantry, strong field positions, and a clear understanding of the ground. They were expected to hold with limited resources, knowing that time itself was part of their defense. Both armies depended on long supply lines, artillery, engineers, and exhausted road networks. Morale mattered as much as ammunition because every shell, meal, and stretcher had to reach men fighting in broken country. To reach Monte Cassino, Allied units moved through ruined towns, river crossings, and bottlenecks where every bridge mattered. The approach itself became a test of endurance before the main battle even began. The battlefield was dominated by steep slopes, the Rapido and nearby valleys, and the ancient abbey perched above them. Rain, mud, and low cloud often hid the ground, making observation and movement painfully difficult. The abbey itself became a symbol as much as a military object. Its height and visibility drew attention, while the surrounding ruins, rocks, and terraces offered cover to defenders on the slopes below. Allied planners did not agree on a single answer. Some wanted direct pressure along the valley, while others favored attacks that would turn the position from the flanks and force the Germans to shift. The German plan was simpler: absorb attacks, use the terrain, and make every advance costly. Defensive strongpoints, artillery observation, and careful timing turned the mountains into a trap for attackers. The opening phase brought artillery fire, probing attacks, and heavy movement in bad weather. Units advanced into shell-scarred ground where visibility was poor and progress could vanish in a matter of minutes. In the valley, bridges and crossings became pressure points because they controlled movement and supply. Each attempt to force a route forward met fire from higher ground and the limits of the landscape. The fighting spread across ridges, gullies, and shattered stone villages. Small gains often came at the cost of exhaustion because every new position had to be held under immediate counterpressure. As the battle dragged on, commanders searched for a break in the line. The fight became less about one dramatic charge than about finding a weak seam in a layered defense. Weather added its own weaponry. Cold rain turned tracks into mud, cloud hid artillery observers, and wind carried sound unpredictably through the hills, confusing both movement and timing. The abbey's destruction in February 1944 remains one of the battle's most debated moments. To many on the ground, it seemed tied to military necessity, yet the ruins also created new cover for defenders. After that, the battlefield changed but did not become easier. Rubble, shattered walls, and broken slopes made movement more dangerous, while observation from surrounding heights remained a constant threat. Different Allied formations took turns attacking, each learning from the failures of the last. The battle became a sequence of assaults, pauses, and renewed pressure, rather than a single continuous advance. Polish troops later took on the mountain heights in a final drive that symbolized the international character of the campaign. Their attack came after earlier efforts had failed to crack the line. The decisive movement was not one blow, but a widening of pressure across the front. Once the Germans risked being outflanked and overstretched, the defensive system began to lose its grip. At the same time, the broader Allied offensive elsewhere in Italy helped change the equation. Monte Cassino was no longer an isolated hill fight, but part of a larger push that threatened the whole defensive line. When the breakthrough came, it was gradual and costly rather than sudden. German units withdrew in order where they could, trying to preserve combat power even as the position became untenable. The immediate aftermath was a landscape of exhaustion. Ruins, shell holes, and broken roads marked the cost of the campaign, while medics, engineers, and supply crews tried to restore order. For the civilians of the region, the battle meant displacement, damaged homes, and a long return to ordinary life. Their experience is essential because the fighting happened inside a lived landscape, not an empty map. Strategically, Monte Cassino helped open the road toward Rome and proved that the German line in Italy could be broken. But the victory came slowly, and it did not end the war in the peninsula. In the years that followed, the battle became part of national memory for several countries. It was remembered as sacrifice, cooperation, endurance, and also as a warning about the cost of attacking well-prepared ground. Historians still debate the necessity of some decisions, especially the destruction of the abbey and the timing of major assaults. Those debates reflect how uncertainty and pressure shaped wartime judgment. They also qualify claims of simple heroism or simple failure. Monte Cassino was fought by many nations, under imperfect intelligence, on ground that punished every mistake and rewarded patience. Some accounts emphasize tactical lessons, while others focus on the human cost and the limits of firepower. Both views are useful because the battle was shaped by machines and by the endurance of people. Today, Monte Cassino is a place of memory, pilgrimage, and quiet landscape. The monastery, the slopes, and the valleys now invite reflection on how history can be written into a place. Standing there, it is easier to understand why the battle lasted so long. The heights, the narrow approaches, and the weather all made the ridge feel larger than the armies fighting over it. The battle endures in memory because it compresses the larger story of the Italian campaign into one hard place. It shows how geography can shape strategy and how strategy can reshape a landscape. It also reminds us that victory in war is rarely neat. Even when a line breaks, the cost remains in ruined ground, disrupted lives, and memories carried by many nations. Monte Cassino was not the only battle of the war, but it became one of its defining tests. In that sense, it still speaks to the limits of power and the endurance required to overcome them. The hills are quiet now, but the silence is not empty. It carries the memory of soldiers, civilians, and commanders whose choices helped decide the road through Italy.